8 minutes to talk about Australia's most beautiful valley. So I'm going to talk about Australia and some of the problems that we face in tourism in rural communities. It's not at all the same sort of debate and discussion you've just been having, partly because some of the people that live there, their ancestors have only been there 200 years, and some others who have been there 65,000 years. So who are the visitors? And it's getting quite complicated. But there's a little picture of Kangaroo Valley drawn by a white man in its early discovery in 1820. It's considered a very beautiful place. And the Aboriginal people, the local area, the Wadi Wadi people, there's about 500 in each of the tribes, who would go to the Kangaroo Valley area to take food when they needed it, when it wasn't available on the coastline. For them it was a land of plenty. For white Europeans, we described it therefore as the Garden of Eden for Aboriginal people, which obviously isn't the same thing for them. It's a nice open space, and when the Europeans first arrived there, they decided, in fact, it was so beautiful that no painter could improve upon. And there's somebody standing at Fitzroy Falls in a very dangerous location at a very famous site that we go to now. And at that point, we descended into the valley. In the top left, you can see we cut all the trees down and started an agricultural industry. And all the poor convicts were given pardons, were given small pieces of land and built little houses. And they tried to build a society in that environment. And then they built a lovely bridge. And the tourism business really started in about the 1930s. And there's the sign to prove it. From that point, we now move closer to the present day. So what I'm trying to say is there's been a history of exploitation by the community in various forms since they've been going there. So we then decided to call it Australia's most beautiful valley because it is very beautiful, and we established our own carbon program. We measure the tourist accommodation users, what their carbon footprint is. They have an annual audit, and they can join the Green Kangaroo program. And that has been very successful in getting a greater awareness of the environment. It's true to say that that line, Australia's most beautiful valley, is something that the community share, and they appreciate the beauty. As you notice, I said at the beginning, this was the tragedy of beauty, is the fact that everybody who goes there finds it a beautiful, green, lush place, not something one normally associates with Australia. And from the beginnings of tourism in the last few decades, we've got some more palatial eco establishments which have tried to buy renewable energy or try to be greener, horse trekking, canoe riding. And we're very proud to have restored our wooden suspension bridge. We had a big fight with the government to ensure that they didn't make it a two-lane road with a concrete base, but actually used a wooden base, and had to get all the technicians from all around the state who had the skills to help us. But I say Pride and Prejudice because being a new country is a different understanding of the word development than you might have in Europe. And for an Australian, often the word development is very positive. It means removing lots of trees and building lots of buildings. That's progress. The idea of keeping old things is rather, well, passé isn't an Australian word, but inappropriate, because there were wooden shacks, they were poor, that's the past, we're better than you guys. Obviously there's a prejudice also to not use the word pioneer. If you talk about pioneers, that suggests people that went around butchering Aboriginal people. So also there's the prejudice of not talking about a period of history which we all try to ignore. So there's a very great deal of complication about what is the sense of place for the people who are there. Many of the people, like me, which they call blow-ins, turn up to live there. Obviously, my sense of place is entirely different than the Aboriginal people that live there or some of the long-standing farming families. We do have a heritage walk, and I suppose with those photographs I've tried to convey the lack of excitement from the visitors to pass by and see the heritage content of our beautiful village with 45 heritage listed buildings, because that's the past. We want to look at the future. Our sense of place is development and progress. I did try to bring everybody together. We did win a highly commended 7 years ago here, and in that photograph you'll see a very eclectic range of local community members. The man holding the frame is the mayor, and the woman beside him is probably a deadly enemy. There's a whole variety of people, but we did use responsible tourism and the green kangaroo to bridge gaps and give people a sense of place that in fact taking responsibility and improving the environment was a good thing to do. I have to say that we became a bit too successful, and that's a concern even on our standards of a community of 340 in the village and about 1,000 people living outside, because then this happened. So then we have a local farmer sells his property to a family that own a range of carpet shops, and they want to be landed gentry, and they want to make a statement, and they can't make farming work very easily, so they decide that they should turn their farm into an eco-centre. I'm using this as an example to demonstrate the challenges that we face, in that you can only rezone the land if it's ecotourism. And obviously 42 chalets in a small area doesn't necessarily quantify as ecotourism. Just to be brief and to define it, there are some definitions there from the New South Wales Planning Department. For words like, it's got to be sensitively designed and located so it is minimised bulk, scale, overall physical footprint, and any ecological visual impact. Any ecological impact. It's fantastic. Somebody's going to measure all of those ecological impacts. I haven't got a clue. These are just words. You'll also notice things like efficient and minimal energy and water use. Does that mean a solar panel? 1 million Australian homes have solar panels. It's totally vague and undefensible. And there's the community trying to fight it. We fought it for 3 years. 3 years of hard graft. And nobody's looking very happy there, as you can see. In the end, the council agreed with us not to permit it. So the landowners said, we're going to the Land and Environment Court. The court was held on the property. They would only allow us to walk to the entry gates, where we had a formal court. And after 10,000 words from yours truly and various other things, we were successful in blocking it. Because obviously it isn't ecotourism, but the definitions are so weak we can't defend it. My point to you today is, while a lot of people here talk about over-tourism and the tourists and how jolly bad they are, my strong argument to you is, what about the community that invites them? What about the community that abuses the place for gain profit by changing the land that's heritage value to have 42 chalets or just turn their home into an Airbnb? Since I've been there, the number of competitors that I face has gone from 57 to over 300 without new buildings. Without new buildings. Our school numbers have halved. In the Shoalhaven City Council area I live in, 35,000 dwellings. We've got 15,000 additional DAs ready for building, but nobody's building them. So we are losing our community by the very people that live there. The very people that come there to profit, because they see it is more beneficial to have a home they can rent out than go on the stock market, because we're all desperate to have a good, happy retirement. And that, I think, is a key motivation. And so what do? We need research to explain actually what are the benefits, the economic benefits from tourism. Where do they really exist? And we ought to have some knowledge, because we don't. We have a lot of prejudice and our own opinions in these situations. And overall, we need some jolly good updated definitions, so we don't just say a solar panel or two. Anyway, that gives you an idea of the new world, as they call it. It's a little possibly different than your old world. Thank you for your attention.